God's eternal love. To offer them is to remember Him, and through His memory to save the world, and through His memory to save the world. Miracles mirror God's eternal love, and to offer them is to remember Him, and through His memory to save the world, and through His memory to save the world. Miracles mirror God's eternal love. To offer them is to remember Him, and through His memory to save the world, and through His memory to save the world. Well, miracles mirror God's eternal love. To offer them is to remember Him, and through His memory to save the world. Well, thank you for joining me today and studying lesson 350 in A Course in Miracles workbook for students. We're reading from the original edition in the workbook, and we'll be reading out of the Song of Prayer, which is the Foundation for Inner Peace's publication, not the original edition. The publisher and how to reach them will be in the description below for both the original edition and for the Foundation for Inner Peace version. And here it's Saturday, December the 16th of 2023. I'm Miracle Willie, forgiveness teacher from the Ozarks. Lesson 350 says, miracles mirror God's eternal love. To offer them is to remember Him, and through His memory to save the world. What we forgive becomes a part of us as we perceive ourselves. Okay, that's a key idea. What we forgive becomes a part of us as we perceive ourselves. You can see why a lot of people don't want to practice forgiveness, because they have an idea that they don't want to be perceived as what they're forgiving. But what we're not recognizing is that forgiveness is the key to happiness. Forgiveness is the letting go of all illusions. And when someone wrongs you, that's an illusion. So we want to let go of that. You let the cream rise to the top. Let your goodness come forth as you learn to practice forgiveness. What we forgive becomes a part of us as we perceive ourselves. The Son of God incorporates all things within Himself as you created Him. Your memory depends on His forgiveness. This is a prayer. Your memory, God, depends on my forgiveness. What He is unaffected by His thoughts. What we are is unaffected by our thoughts. But what we look upon is their direct result. Therefore, my Father, I would turn to you. Only your memory will set me free, and only my forgiveness teaches me to let your memory return to me and give it to the world in thankfulness. Let's read the prayer once again. What we forgive becomes a part of us as we perceive ourselves. The Son of God incorporates all things within Himself as you created Him. Your memory depends on His forgiveness. What He is unaffected by His thoughts, but what He looks upon is their direct result. Therefore, my Father, I would turn to you. Only your memory will set me free, and only my forgiveness teaches me to let your memory return to me and give it to the world in thankfulness. And as we gather miracles from Him, we will indeed be grateful. For as we remember Him, His Son will be restored to us in the reality of love. So, you can have thoughts of attack and of being attacked, but that doesn't change the fact that you, as God created you, are invulnerable. You can't be attacked, and you never will attack. You're sinless. And so is the whole world that God's created. So let's see the real world and not the illusion of a world that seems to be proved by knocking on wood. That's not necessarily the real world. unless you're seeing it through the eyes of the atonement, through the eyes of Christ, the forgiven world. Once again, miracles mirror God's eternal love. Miracles mirror God's eternal love. To offer them is to remember him, and through his memory to save the world. In our associated reading, this will be the last day for what is a miracle. A miracle is a correction. It does not create nor really change at all. It merely looks on devastation and reminds the mind that what it sees is false. It undoes error, but does not attempt to go beyond perception, nor exceed the function of forgiveness. Thus it stays within time's limits. Yet it paves the way for the return of timelessness and love's awakening. For fear must slip away under the gentle remedy it gives. A miracle contains the gift of grace, for it is given and received as one, and thus it illustrates the law of truth the world does not obey because it fails entirely to understand its ways. A miracle inverts perception, which was upside down before, and thus it ends the strange distortions that were manifest. Now is perception open to the truth. Now is forgiveness seen as justified. Forgiveness is the home of miracles. The eyes of Christ deliver them to all they look upon in mercy and in love. Perception stands corrected in his sight, and what was meant to curse has come to bless. Each lily of forgiveness offers all the world the silent miracle of love, and each is laid before the Word of God upon the universal altar to Creator and creation, in the light of perfect purity and endless joy. The miracle is taken first on faith, because to ask for it implies the mind has been made ready to conceive of what it cannot see and does not understand. Yet faith will bring its witnesses to show that what it rested on is really there, and thus the miracle will justify your faith in it and show it rested on a world more real than what you saw before, a world redeemed from what you thought you saw. Miracles fall like drops of healing rain from heaven on a dry and dusty world where starved and thirsty creatures came to die. Now they have water. Now the world is green, and everywhere the signs of life spring up to show that what is born can never die, for what has life has immortality. And our lesson once again, take this rain, write it on a card if you need to, but say it throughout the day. Try for every hour of the day. Miracles mirror God's eternal love. To offer them is to remember him, and through his memory to save the world. Okay, and then in our song of prayer, we're ready for, in chapter 1, prayer, section Roman numeral 3, praying for others. And before we read that, let's look about what's going on around the world today. It's Barbie and Barney Backlash Day, which, for parents that have a difficult time listening to the same repetitive sayings and things of these particular toys, they're suggesting you have a day where you don't do that. Let kids play with Play-Doh or art or something. My encouragement, though, is if it's bothersome to you, there may be a reason why it's bothersome. It may not be the highest good that you could be offering your children. So look at it closely and make sure that what you're giving them the other 364 days of the year is really good for their eternal growth, their awakening, their happiness. You're setting the stage as a parent for the way your child will respond for the rest of their life, unless they're on a spiritual journey where they can actually do the backwash, change what they were trained to do or that they learned to do by either their parents or guardians or their teachers or some other place where they integrated ideas. That's the purpose of meditation, to let the cream come to the top, as I said a while ago, to let the good come forth and all the things that aren't good, to let them go. That's what we do when we meditate. We get a chance to choose again how we want to be. and align with our true identity, the Christ in each of us. Boston Tea Party Day, and that was on December the 16th of 1773. Day of Reconciliation, and that was a South African holiday they began after apartheid ended. National, try to encourage people to be reconciled to one another without the training, which they were trained as children, to think of the races as inferior, and they were at odds with each other. So they wanted to reconcile. Hopefully Nelson Mandela taught them to meditate, huh? National Chocolate Covered Anything Day. Not just ants, but strawberries and all those things, peanuts. Anyway. National Wreaths Across America Day is kind of, we're getting in close to Christmas time, and people think about the ones that have crossed over. So they came up with a kind of a holiday. It's kind of like Memorial Day, but it's a little bit ahead of Christmas, where you can put wreaths across America on the markers that denote your loved ones. Stupid Toy Day. I guess that's maybe like a pet rock or maybe a Mr. Potato Head or something. I don't know. Zionism Day. And a Zionist was the movement to try to create a homeland for the Jewish people, and they were finally successful on May 14th, 1948. And then there's Las Posadas Day, which I found out on Drexel University, and it's the Mexican and the Spanish-speaking holiday where they celebrate Joseph and Mary's return to Bethlehem and their journey to Bethlehem. And it's actually from the 16th to the 24th, so maybe it's a whole week of festivities. Las Posadas. And then I want to tell you about a plant. I had a toothache yesterday, still have it a little bit, and had a crown come off, and anyway, underneath that, it had a tooth that's giving me a little difficulty. Well, I was trying to find, I use salt water wash, warm salt water, and tea tree oil, garlic, crushed garlic. It has to be fresh crushed garlic. You put the juices or the garlic on the area where it's sore and around that tooth and the gum and let it soak in. Those are some things you can do for toothaches. Well, I found this plant, and I thought, we got to talk about this one. It's called the toothache plant. I think it's a Spilanthes acmella. I also heard it called an Acmella oleracea, so be aware. Other names are, Sichuan buttons, paracress, buzz buttons, ting flowers, and electric daisy. and those are some other names for the toothache plant. A small erect plant that grows quickly and bears gold and red inflorescence. It is frost sensitive but perennial in warmer climates. This plant prefers well-drained, black, high organic content soil. If starting outdoors, the seeds should not be exposed to cold weather, so start after the first frost, so you can grow them as an annual. Seeds need direct sunlight to germinate, so they should not be buried. And I'd probably throw just a tiny bit of dirt on it so the light could still get to them, but they're kind of hidden from the birds, and they can soak up some water from just a tiny bit of soft dirt on top, but very, very low, where you could actually still almost see the seed. That's what I would think what they would do. And I'd probably start them indoors and then take them out if they get started. And it says here, I found all this on Wikipedia, a decoction or infusion of the leaves and flowers has been used in folk medicine for toothaches. Also, it has culinary uses in salads and cooked greens. And then I found on Rare Seeds, also known as Baker Creek Heirloom Seeds, the toothache plant. And they call it the Spilanthes acmella. And also known as buzz button or electric daisy, toothache plant is one of our favorite herbs. It's a pretty little flower with a fun secret. Eating it will cause your mouth to tingle and feel numb. The sensation is not dangerous. The gentle numbing has been used in herbal medicine as a natural remedy for toothaches. So also fresh squeeze. Oh, and then I put a note here. That's all that they said. But I also mentioned that you could use that garlic. If you use garlic, some people need to mix it in with a little oil so it's not too hard on. Some fresh garlic, for some people, can burn. So mixing it with a little like olive oil. Same thing if you're going to use something like clove oil is another good one for toothaches. But mix it, I'd say probably a fourth or maybe even less clove oil and 3/4 olive oil as a carrier, or any kind of oil, and so it doesn't burn you. And then, of course, I've already told you about the saltwater wash. Okay, well, there's something if you ever get a toothache and you want some little relief and your prayers aren't working. And, I had some really nice long meditations, though, with a toothache, but we better start reading. Praying for others. We said that prayer is always for yourself, and this is so. Why, then, should you pray for others at all? And if you should, how should you do it? Praying for others, if rightly understood, becomes a means for lifting your projections of guilt from your brother, enabling you to recognize it is not he who is hurting you. The poisonous thought that he is your enemy, your evil counterpart, your nemesis, must be relinquished before you can be saved from guilt. For this the means is prayer, of rising power and with ascending goals, until it reaches even up to God. 2. The earlier forms of prayer at the bottom of the ladder will not be free from envy and malice. They call for vengeance, not for love. Nor do they come from one who understands that they are cause for death, made out of fear by those who cherish guilt. They call upon a vengeful God, and it is he who seems to answer them. Hell cannot be asked for another, and then escaped by him who asks for it. Only those who are in hell can ask for hell, those who have been forgiven and who accepted their forgiveness could never make a prayer like that. 3. At these levels, then, the learning goal must be recognized that prayer will bring an answer only in the form in which the prayer was made. This is enough. From here it will be an easy step to the next level. The next ascent begins with this: what I have asked for my brother is not what I would have. Thus have I made of him my enemy. And that's italicized. What I have asked for my brother is not what I would have. Thus have I made of him my enemy. It is apparent that this step cannot be reached by anyone who sees no value or advantage to himself in setting others free. It is apparent that this step cannot be reached by anyone who sees no value or advantage to himself in setting others free. Let's read it again. What I have asked for my brother is not what I would have. Thus have I made of him my enemy. We only want to ask for what we would want. We want to identify with our brother. You don't ever want to pray for their hurt. That'd be more like, that's some black magic, I suppose they might call that. What I have asked for my brother is not what I would have. Thus have I made of him my enemy. It is apparent that this step cannot be reached by anyone who sees no value or advantage to himself in setting others free. This may be long delayed, because it may seem to be dangerous instead of merciful. To the guilty, there seems indeed to be a real advantage in having enemies, and this imagined gain must go, if enemies are to be set free. 4. Guilt must be given up and not concealed. Nor can this be done without some pain, and a glimpse of the merciful nature of this step may for some time be followed by a deep retreat into fear. So he's saying that guilt must be given up and not concealed, nor can this be done without some pain. Because you're going to have to look at what you were throwing guilt on, and that's going to be a little painful. But it doesn't have to be any more than just the time it takes to see it, and let it go. Choose the vision of Christ, the forgiven world. And glimpse and guilt must be given up and not concealed. Nor can this be done without some pain. And a glimpse of the merciful nature of this step may for some time be followed by a deep retreat into fear. For fear's defenses are fearful in themselves, and when they are recognized, they bring their fear with them. Yet what advantage has an illusion of escape ever brought a prisoner? Has real escape from guilt? His real escape from guilt can lie only in the recognition that the guilt has gone. And how can this be recognized as long as he hides it in another and does not see it as his own? Fear of escape makes it difficult to welcome freedom, and to make a jailer of an enemy seems to be safety. How then can he be released without an insane fear for yourself? You have made of him your salvation and your escape from guilt. Your investment in this escape is heavy, and your fear of letting it go is strong. 5. Of course, this is exactly the opposite of our lesson today. Miracles mirror God's eternal love. To offer them is to remember him, and through his memory to save the world. That's the kind of prayer we want to be saying. Paragraph 5. Stand still an instant now and think what you have done. Do not forget that it is you who did it, and who can therefore let it go. Hold out your hand. This enemy has come to bless you. Take his blessing and feel how your heart is lifted and your fear released. Do not hold on to it, nor on to him. He is the Son of God along with you. He is no jailer, but a messenger of Christ. Be this to him, that you may see him thus. Wow, that is really goes along with our lesson. Miracles mirror God's eternal love. To offer them is to remember him, and through his memory to save the world. In our last paragraph 6, it is not easy to realize that prayers for things, for status, for human love, for external gifts, in quotes, of any kind, are always made to set up jailers and to hide from guilt. These things are used for goals that substitute for God and therefore distort the purpose of prayer. The desire for them is the prayer. The desire for them is the prayer. Remember, every wish of our heart, every desire you have is a prayer. One need not ask explicitly. The goal of God is lost in the quest for lesser goals of any kind, and prayer becomes requests for enemies. The power of prayer can be quite clearly recognized even in this. No one who wants an enemy will fail to find one, but just as surely will he lose the only true goal that is given him. Think of the cost and understand it well. All other goals are at the cost of God. Well, let's let our only goal be that of finding God, knowing God, being filled with the joy and happiness of God. God is love. Okay, well, let's go look at our lesson once again. Miracles mirror God's eternal love. To offer them is to remember him, and through his memory to save the world. And the prayer says, what we forgive becomes a part of us as we perceive ourselves. The Son of God incorporates all things within himself as you created him. Your memory depends on his forgiveness. Your memory, God, depends on his forgiveness. What he is unaffected by his thoughts, but what he looks upon is their direct result. Therefore, my Father, I would turn to you. Only your memory will set me free, and only my forgiveness teaches me to let your memory return to me and give it to the world in thankfulness. And as we gather miracles from him, we will indeed be grateful. For as we remember him, God, his Son will be restored to us in the reality of love. And I did want to tell you another word for peace. It's in the Irish language, the Gaelic language, and it's pronounced Suaimhneas. So, and I'll put the word in the description below. But until tomorrow, we're going to say our lesson, and we can remember the word Suaimhneas. Miracles mirror God's eternal love. To offer them is to remember him, and through his memory, to save the world. Miracles mirror God's eternal love. To offer them is to remember him, and through his memory to save the world. And through his memory to save the world. Miracles mirror God's eternal love. To offer them is to remember him, and through his memory to save the world. And through his memory to save the world. Miracles mirror God's eternal love. Miracles mirror God's eternal love. To offer them is to remember him. To offer them is to remember him, and through his memory to save the world. And through his memory to save the world. Miracles mirror God's eternal love. To offer them is to remember him, and through his memory to save the world. And through his memory to save the world. Do your morning quiet and your evening quiet, sitting in the silence with your eyes closed, and let God fill your heart. And throughout the day, try for every hour of the day to bring this idea to your memory and to give thanks for something that's going on in your world that God's given you. Miracles mirror God's eternal love. To offer them is to remember him, and through his memory to save the world. Suaimhneas.